Hi writers, this is lesson number 7 in how to write a book in your spare time when you have no spare time or energy. And we're talking in this video about recovery and inspiration. So if you have already gotten to a point where you have completed the first draft of your book, whether that's a poetry collection, memoir, nonfiction, novel, whatever it is, you may have hit a point where you're ready to pull back. Remember that when we talked about cycles of creativity, we discussed the fact that you can only be in the flow, sort of in a period of intense output for a certain amount of time. And then you have to kind of taper off and pull back to a season where you rest, where the ground lies fallow, so to speak, and where you sort of feed into yourself in such a way that something new can grow and you can circle up to a place of creative flow again, right? So you can look at this video in the micro. So for instance, if you're able to work 2 or 3 days a week and then you have to taper off because you have other responsibilities in your life, then you could think of this as output and then pulling back and recovering and contributing to your inspiration creatively. But I'm mostly speaking in the macro. So you have finished a draft, what now? So there are some things about the postpartum period for women that I wish desperately I knew when I was in that season of my life. Just after having my kids, I thought, oh, I've done it. I've done the thing and I'm able to nurse. And now on day 3 or 4, I can pop out of bed and clean and cook and just get back into the flow of life. I was unaware and certainly underestimated the amount of care that I really needed in that season. So when your body has gone through an extraordinary output, right? It has accomplished an extraordinary feat. It afterwards requires extraordinary care, right? We know now that we're tapping into other cultures and learning more about the long-term effects of not caring for a woman postpartum. We're learning that you need days and weeks where you step up from absolutely no activity to a tiny amount of activity still in bed to a tiny amount of activity in the bedroom, back up slowly to full functioning. During that time, women need nourishing food. It's not the time to lose weight and eat celery sticks. It's the time for broths and stews and calories and anything that allows a woman's body to renew itself, heal itself, and also provide everything that the baby needs, right? So similarly, when you have accomplished a great creative output, a creative feat, and the draft of anything, a single draft of anything is an enormous creative feat. Do not underestimate that. Take time to celebrate and applaud yourself for reaching the end, the final period, whatever it is. That's huge. So what you need, now that you have done that, is great care. You need recovery. And whether that's just in the few days a week or in the next month or in a long season after completing a draft. For me, it's often 3 to 6 months after a draft is finished, during which I'm just taking care of myself and I am not at all looking at the manuscript. For some of you, that may be a challenge. It makes perfect sense that when you've poured so much of yourself, so much of your time and energy into your little book baby, that you want to hover over it and either kind of like hold it to yourself and stroke its head and want to protect it and want to plan its future and just, really obsess. Or you lean a little more negative and you want to nitpick every little detail, go back through every word, every line, just obsess over your main character's motivations. This is not the time for that. That is editing and rewriting. This is a time for recovery. So for some of you, it may be so difficult that you need to do maybe drastic things to separate yourself from that manuscript. If you have to send it to a very trusted and responsible friend and then delete it from your computer, do that. Pull away from it so that you can breathe. That's the first step. After that, there are a few things you can do to really care for yourself. And remember that if you want to just go all in, give every single ounce of energy and creativity you have, and then finish this one book and then collapse from exhaustion and die, you can do that. You can do it. But if this is a long thing, a long-term practice, if writing is something that you want to do over the course of your life, then you're going to have to start building sustainable habits now. You need to know how you can do this, not just for one draft, but for multiple drafts. And then again, for multiple books. Like, why do women have other children? They have to have some level of disconnection from the experience of giving birth to the first one, and they need a lot of care to support them to get back to the place where they're able to do that again. So during that season of recovery, which may be different in terms of time and circumstances for everybody, try to focus on sleep. One of the obvious things, right? It's like the answer to every problem, getting more sleep. But I would recommend, even in seasons when you're moving through the manuscript and trying to accomplish, a chapter or a paragraph, another portion of the story, if you are wondering about where to get the energy that you need, I highly recommend an extra hour of sleep over an extra hour of writing. That kind of investment in your mental health and your physical health, you cannot possibly overestimate the importance of sleep. And that is true creatively as well, because when you're sleeping, when you are not thinking about a problem in your story actively, consciously, your brain is still working on it. It's while you're resting, while you're totally focused on something else, it is still kind of running the engines in the background for you. It's doing the work for you. So again, you don't have to hover. You don't have to just be filled with anxiety about some part of the story that you can't crack or some particular writing issue that's getting in the way. You can let that recede to the background. Sleep is going to renew you in multiple ways. Get as much as you can. You will feel like a new person afterwards. Then, you might, after having spent so much time investing in finding words for things, that's really challenging creatively, you might want to do something creative that has absolutely nothing to do with language. Maybe you just listen to really relaxing instrumental music. Maybe you curl up and watch the TV series that everyone said was great, but you didn't watch because you were writing. Maybe you go outside and start digging in the dirt and planting. Maybe you need to buy some colored clay and just play with that. Maybe you need something in your hands to work with. It can be uniquely, creatively refreshing to do something creative completely outside the realm of the creative work that you're trying to focus on. And I think ultimately you'll find that it feeds in. And this is an important point because as long as you are doing the writing, as long as you are regularly sitting down and writing, whatever that looks like for you, you can go ahead and assume that in a sense, everything you do is writing. Sleeping is writing. Watching a great series or movie is writing. Creative work is writing. Eating well, caring for your body, exercise, it's writing. All of it is flowing into the same well from which you'll draw later. The last thing I recommend in this season is reading. And of course, if you're a writer, now I've heard from a couple of writers in recent years that reading is not something they super love to do. And I'm always immediately worried about the prospects for those people. If you don't love to read, I'm not convinced that writing is for you. Maybe another mode of expression. But reading, the more we write, the more thoughtful opinions and insights we have into the writing of others. So there was a time when I started writing and I thought, how can anybody ever write about writing? Writing is so hard and requires so much investment and so much energy. Where do they find the time to write about writing? But I see now, as time goes on and you have more experience in this craft and in this work, you will have more and more thoughtful, nuanced, detailed, interesting perspectives and responses to the writing of others. So after you've finished a draft, you might want to just do some reading. Again, we've been giving out, now we're going to take in. You might be wary of picking up a really fantastic book in the genre in which you're trying to write. It could be inspiring, it could be wonderful. It also could be crushing and discouraging and hold you back from wanting to start again. It could make you feel all of your insecurities more acutely. It could highlight your weaknesses. Maybe that's something you save until you're a little further down the road. However, if you have books that feel like home, where you return to certain phrases or meet again with certain characters and you just feel a thrill no matter how many times you read them, maybe that's something to go back to and treat yourself to now. Maybe you try some interesting activities in terms of reading. Maybe you go to your local bookstore and go to the staff picks section and grab something. Don't read the back cover. Don't choose based on a certain genre or price or anything. Just grab something and go with it. See what comes after a chapter or two inside that book. Again, you're developing your language. You're developing the breadth of your ability to understand, use, and appreciate language. You might also try, if you're someone who keeps lists of like things I ought to read, I should read these classic books and I should read these books that were recently released and so said I should read whatever. You might try during this season to throw that away and do what you're drawn to do. Remember that we are always following this path of delight. We are looking for those little will-o'-the-wisps and going after them one by one in order to renew ourselves as artists and writers. So if there's something that makes you feel excited, energized, curious, go for that. Go in that direction. Now, our goal in all of this is not only to invest in ourselves so that we are ready to move forward with our writing, but also to kind of forget what we just wrote in that first manuscript. A little bit of distance and objectivity are necessary to begin the editing process. And if you have some distance from that manuscript and you've kind of forgotten your weak spots, just as a side note, don't go back and reread it. You get to the end, final period, close that document, run, get out of there. You don't need to look at it right now. You want actually to forget it so that when you come back in, you have fresh eyes with which to see the work that you have already finished. And when it's time for that, when you're ready for the editing process, we will move on to video number 8. I'll see you there.